So earlier today, the results came in from Kentucky, and they're final now. Amy McGrath won against Charles Booker in the Democratic primary in that state by about 2 points. And so it was very, very close. Amy McGrath raised $41 million. Charles Booker, who's a black legislator in Kentucky and who's progressive, did not raise $41 million. He raised substantially less than that. And so part of the reason McGrath raised $41 million, there's Charles Booker, is that Chuck Schumer said she was the anointed one and directed all the donors towards McGrath. Second part of the reason is until the very last month of the election, everybody in Kentucky media treated this race as a fait accompli and presented McGrath as really the only Democrat running, when that was never true. So, but I want to focus one more time here on Chuck Schumer and the Democratic leadership. Ben, when they anoint someone and give them an overwhelming amount of money and the press attention that comes along with it, and they shut out new voices, and sometimes those voices are black, sometimes they're white, Asian, it could be anything. They're almost always progressive, of course, the voices that are shut out. How much does that protect the already powerful, the institutions that are in place, and honestly, the racial infrastructure of the country, which favors white Americans?
Yeah, that's their firewall. I mean, that's their last line of defense. I mean, the best way to protect the institutions of this government, the institutions of power, is to make sure that no one who is a genuine threat actually gets some time to be heard. Because the reality is when progressives are heard, their message resonates. Because they're talking that stuff that people really need. They're talking about the material conditions that people are living in, and that's a threat. That's a threat not only because it really awakens that popular spirit in amongst leftists, amongst Democrats, people consider themselves liberal. They forget, and then they hear a progressive remind them that this is who they are supposed to have been this whole time. But then it also is a threat because I think that is the way that you pick off Republicans. You pick off Republicans by talking about their material conditions and not by trying to pretend like you are a Republican.
Yeah, obviously I agree with that. But given that the current people in power are disproportionately white, and I don't mean that as a judgment on anyone, I just mean it as a demographic fact, disproportionately white male. I forget the exact numbers now, but we covered on the show earlier. I think about at least 2/3 of the people in Congress are white males. And in the country, they're actually just 30%. So it's wildly disproportionate. And so when they say, hey, we're just protecting incumbents, okay, I get the logic of it. I totally disagree for political reasons and ideological reasons and issues of fairness. But I also disagree because that maintains the disproportionate power of white males and does not allow. And it's not just based on skin color or ethnicity or gender, does not allow other points of view and perspectives in. So Ilhan Omar is a completely different perspective that they didn't have before. And I think she's added to the conversation in a great way. And so, but if all you did was incumbent protection, and it's a little different because she wasn't running against an incumbent, but Ayanna Pressley was, AOC was, and you wouldn't have had those voices. Democratic leadership, including Nancy Pelosi in the House, 100% wanted AOC and Ayanna Pressley to lose and the incumbents to win. And we wouldn't have had those strong women of color. So Emma, they say, no, you have to bow your head and you can't criticize Pelosi on these grounds because she's a woman. But doesn't what she do, doesn't it actually prevent, or at least give an opportunity, prevent an opportunity for more women to break through and get in?
Yeah, that's what's so insidious about it. I mean, we saw it in 2016 on a macro level with Hillary Clinton, which was the weaponization of her gender in order to deflect from any criticism or shield her. And it got a lot of people to be cynical about those kinds of arguments when representation is important, specifically representation of different perspectives. I mean, Ilhan Omar is a great example. I mean, a refugee, a black woman, a Muslim woman. She has so many things that she brings to the conversation, and additionally as a progressive, that you wouldn't get from just a standard politician, and they're completely hypocritical about saying, oh, we want, Joe Biden is now going out, I'm going to nominate a black female judge, and he has this whole list of them. But like, would Joe Biden have been supportive of Jamal Bowman or Mondaire Jones or AOC or Rashida Tlaib? By the way, he could endorse Rashida Tlaib, who's in the middle of the contentious primary, and he's choosing not to. No, they use it cynically, the Democratic establishment, in order to push forward candidates that are going to play nice or to deflect themselves from criticism. And I think to average people who are witnessing that kind of discourse, it turns them off because it doesn't seem genuine, because it's not. And it's just another frustrating element of Democrats using representation in a way that I think is false.
Yeah, so I guess one more thing on that. Look, I think I'm hesitating on calling it racist and sexist, and I think partly because the establishment uses those words so much as a shield for corporate candidates that are of the right hue or the right gender. But is it fair to say that more minority voices are going to get kept out of power if the current Democratic leadership strategy of blindly supporting incumbents continues?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair to say, especially, but we see it coming from the establishment in general. Then we see it coming from the Congressional Black Caucus PAC endorsing white candidates over the black candidates and incumbents. And that's their excuse, that they're saying these are incumbents, we have to protect them. The thing is that the trend is that people of color are overwhelmingly progressive in this country because of our material conditions in this country, right? We're not just progressive because we like the name progressive. We're progressive because the policies disproportionately help our communities, right? And these are policies that every single one of us would benefit from. And so the issue of the lack of representation, the Democratic Party has gotten really good at giving us full representation. It's not representation in terms of what we're really dealing with in our different communities. It's representation in just terms of skin color. And I'm not interested in having someone else go up there and be the blackface of neoliberalism, because that doesn't help the majority of the black community.
Well, Ben, just a quick point, because I think it's under discussed. Representation, I think, is or just how Jewish Americans are some of the most progressive blocs in the country as well. But then you have Democrats saying that they're representing the right-wing interests of Israel, which is completely counter to how most Jewish Americans feel. That's just another example of Democrats cynically using that and then turning around, or cynically using it to shield themselves from right-wing positions.
Yeah. No, I just want to double down on what Emma said, because if you're not used to listening to a progressive show, you probably don't know any of these facts, because TV assiduously keeps you away from them. So does the New York Times and Washington Post. So the overwhelming majority of Jewish Americans vote Democrat and are progressive. They vote more loyally Democratic than almost any other constituency in the country. African Americans are over 90%, but Jewish Americans are at about 70% voting Democratic. And they're among the more progressive groups in the country. But in Democratic leadership, you have people who are generally more right-wing on foreign policy than the average Jewish voter in this country. And they make it seem like, oh, no, we're covered. You know, Cornel West had that great line about black faces in high places and not to get taken in by that, right? But you could make that of almost any minority situation. And so I think it applies to Jewish Americans just as well. Oh, I got Chuck Schumer and he'd like to start a war. And I got Elliot Engel and he'd like to start a war. So that's what Jews in America want. No, they don't want that. I've seen the polling. So just because you're in that category doesn't mean that you represent everybody in that category. And that's why I say they're using it as a shield. And But Ben, one more thing on that I want to ask you. So you're a diehard progressive, and you say, hey, you agree with Cornel West, and we've talked about this before, and you just said it. Do you get pushback at all from the African American community saying, hey, wait, when you criticize Obama, that's a bridge too far? Or what's your sense of the current state of that?
I mean, you have to. It's a delicate situation in the Black community. In your parents' houses, in your grandparents' houses, they have two people on their mantle. They have Jesus and they have Barack Obama. Right. So when you have this conversation with them, you have to be delicate. But if you get past the initial grievance, right, they're really offended initially. If you get past it and you actually go point by point by point by point, they always reluctantly agree with you that there was so much more that should have been done and could have been done for America in general, Black people specifically, in terms of Barack Obama. And especially if you capture it in terms of America in general, because Black people have a general suspicion of America. Right, I wonder why. And if you put it in terms of America and the American government, and then you remind them that Barack Obama was just the next in line in terms of this imperialist government, that really kind of shakes them up. But you can't go in with like a lot of haymakers and just try to shame them, because like I said, they got Jesus on the mantle and they have Obama on the mantle, and you really got to be delicate with it. Well,
Ben, just quickly, I remember your tweet when Bloomberg was in his heyday in the Democratic primary about, I think, was it your mom who was reacting to Mike Bloomberg because she thought Bloomberg had been endorsed by Obama or something like that, and so she was going to support Bloomberg?
Yeah, she was going to support Bloomberg because of the deceptive advertising by Bloomberg, saying that Barack Obama endorsed him, but that actually backfired, because as soon as we got the word out that that's not what happened, they were pissed off with him for using Barack Obama's name in vain. That's a callback. So,
for some reason, I've cited that in conversations with people because you posted that screenshot and it made me laugh so hard.
Yeah. But look, again, that's the media. Even in New York, how often did they tell you how racist stop and frisk was in the press? Not that often when Bloomberg was in charge. And there's an enormous deference to Bloomberg. There's no deference to de Blasio. And so a lot of people had no idea what Bloomberg stood for. I mean, that's the tape that Ben unearthed and broke that story. And in the tape, he says flat out, I think, what was it? 96% of the people that they stopped were Black and Latino. And he said, we did not stop Black people enough, and we stopped white people too much. Yeah. Holy cow, right? If people knew that, if African Americans knew that, what percentage would support Bloomberg? Nearly 0%. Right. They don't know it. Whose fault is that? The media's fault.
When you sign up for a spend and save account at aspiration.com/TYT, we will plant 10 trees. Let's save the planet together.